Hey y'all, welcome back to All Stock, No Bull, where real Texas corn farmers pull up a chair and tell it like it is. Every farmer knows the way to wondering how we're going to make it to the next harvest, because it isn't easy. But if you're looking for a reason to keep pushing, Kyla hits the nail on the head in this episode. She said, so far, we've got a 100% success rate of surviving the bad times, and when farming is good, it is really, really good. So hang in there and know you're not alone. Let's get into it.
Yeah, I'm Aaron Martinka. I farm with my family in Central Texas, just kind of between Austin and Waco. Corn, cotton, and wheat, and have cattle, do some hay. And I've been involved with Texas corn for about 10 years now, and currently serve on the role as chairman of the board. So always anxious to learn and provide input when and where needed.
Kyla Hamilton. I farm with my husband in Shallow Water, Texas. We raise cotton, corn, cattle, and kids. I tell everyone we have 4 kids, so that's a lot to keep us busy. My initial engagement with Texas corn producers actually started with some advocacy efforts they had outside of the board role with Common Ground and different programs like that, and then that evolved into a board seat on both the Checkoff Board as well as the Growers Association. So about 2014, I guess, is when the journey began, and then it's just evolved and spiraled, and here we are.
And now you've got a daughter graduating and going to college.
I do. In August, we'll have a college student.
Hard to believe they were so small. Dee?
Okay. Dee Vaughan. I farm north of Amarillo, a little town called Dumas in Moore and Hartley counties, and grow corn, cotton, grain, sorghum, and wheat, sorghum seed production. I've been farming for about 46 years now, so a long time. I'm probably, I would say, the elder statesman, but nobody considers me to be a statesman, so I'll just say I'm the old man of the board. Helped to start the Lone Star Corn Growers Association in 1989. And it was an affiliate of the National Corn Growers. There was not an affiliate of the National Corn Growers at that time. So we created the Lone Star Corn Growers Association, and then that eventually evolved into the Texas Corn Producers Association. And so I've been on that association one way or the other since 1989, and then I was elected to the Texas Corn Checkoff Board in 1996. So I've been around a long time and seen a lot of changes. Served as NCGA, National Corn Growers Association president back in 2004, was on the board for 5 years. Term limited out there, and then we helped Texas Corn help start the Southwest Council of Agribusiness. I served as an officer there for 6 years. So been around a while, done a few things.
Whenever I first came and interviewed for this job was 1999. And you and Joe Reed, I think, are the only 2 existing. Well, Bert, not Bert, but Wetzel, Bruce Wetzel, and you and Joe were 3 that were on the board then. Bruce was off for a while, so yeah, you're the elder statesman. You and Joe Reed with us, and quite honest, but it's been a pleasure having these 3, and I just have to compliment Dee for his service through all of these things and helping start this and being National Corn Growers president. That was just within about 5 years of me going to work, and that certainly helped us get better founded and grounded in what's happening on a national basis. So thank you for all that service. So, Aaron, you've got your farm, and I think you farm with some of your brother and some family. Kind of, how does all that work? What do y'all irrigate? Kind of, what's your farming situation?
Yeah, I farm with my brother and a cousin. And then we have about 3 other full-time employees. We primarily dry lane. I do have some irrigated. Where we're at, we don't have that much underground water. The only irrigation in our area is just kind of river bottoms from surface water, or shallow river alluvial
So you
water.
pulled out of one of the local rivers?
Yeah, there's one pulled out of a little river. It's a tributary of the Brazos. One farm, another farm, we have some wells that we pull out of.
So right now, is your water situation to pull there? Is it kind of adequate to help you start the year, or are you starting out behind?
Well, it's been interesting navigating or learning. In our board meetings, we talk a lot about groundwater issues, and I deal with a little bit of the groundwater, although our groundwater issues probably aren't as stringent or as, because where I'm at is a real shallow alluvial, so it's kind of manages itself, I guess, to some degree. But then also, on the surface water, learning about that, and kind of through the years, I've been educating myself on that, how water rights work, and got to watch stream flows, and I can kind of figure out when I can maybe pump. But then I got to talk to the Brazos River Authority, to the water master, and, give them notification when you want to pump, what rate you're going to pump, when you're going to stop. So, trying to figure out what the weather forecast is going to be and how that's going to play into your plans, and if the weatherman's going to be right, You can plan, but you can plan for the weather, but when the weatherman's wrong, then that changes your plans too.
So that's a real unique situation for most of Texas, to be watering out of surface water and dealing with that. When we come to Kyla, I don't think you have any water that you have to irrigate out of surface water to deal with the water management.
No, surface water is not a thing where we are at all. So all underground irrigation for us.
All out of the Ogallala.
All out
Do
of
you
the
have
Ogallala.
sprinklers? Do you have some subsurface drip?
Both
Have both?
center pivots and drip. So
Okay. That's the drip is what we're supposed to really be able to save water with.
it is. And, I don't know, you say it's better and it's more efficient and all the thing, but if it doesn't rain, in addition to the drip, it doesn't come up, so there's benefits to both, right? Center pivot, you can get the crop up, right? But if you're planting into dry soil, if you don't get the rain to get it up, the drip only does so good, so it's pros and cons to both, but efficiency is definitely there with the drip.
Well, Dee, you're in an area that's pretty heavily dependent on the Ogallala.
Very much so. We do have the secondary aquifer, the Dockham, or some people refer to it as the Santa Rosa, but it's primarily the Dockham. And so we irrigate out of both of the aquifers. But the Dockham is not universal over the whole northern plains. There are certain spots where it's available and certain spots where it's not.
So in some areas, I've understood that some of that aquifer is pretty brackish. Do you
Down
have
in
that issue?
Down in the Hereford area, Oldham County, I hear that a lot of that is pretty brackish. But we're fortunate in our area; it's fresh water, so we're able to use it, and that gives us a lot more longevity. Because the Ogallala is getting pretty well; it's getting pretty thin.
Okay, so Kyla, I know you talk about your kids a lot. How involved are they all in your farm? And I think y'all have done some interesting diversity to benefit your farm.
We have. So since they were babies, it's just Cole and I and our 4 kids. So of course, as they grow older and get bigger, they can do different jobs. So now that our youngest is 10, and so they're actually helpful, right? Like they can actually do things, not just busy work. So, they'll do everything from running equipment to the basic tasks that no one wants to do, right? Like feeding animals and different things. So we have integrated some agritourism too, where we invite the public out to the farm for different events on the farm. And so they'll run and manage that, everything from the cashier side of it to stocking to, just general assistance. So whatever we're doing, they're doing it too. Fully engaged.
Makes it sound like fun doing all those activities with your kids.
It is. It's kind of a way to, anyone who farms for a living knows like it's a lifestyle, right? It's not a job. It's not something you go and do and then come home and it's over. Like it's everything all the time. And so when the kids were little, I kind of decided like we're either never going to see Cole because he's on the farm, or we're going to go do it with him. And that's just kind of where we landed. So whatever he's doing, we're just right there along with him. And then it's grown into kind of a well-oiled machine. Everyone has a role and does it, and we're all together.
Aaron, I know you've been on the board and kind of watched your kids grow. They haven't gotten to the point of graduating, but how has that all worked? You know, as a young farmer, young family, how does that work? Is it rewarding to you to do, or?
Well, it works because my wife allows it to work. You know, when I'm gone, that puts more work on her plate, and I definitely have to thank her to thank her for, she knows when I'm gonna be gone, and kids still got to go to school and go to sports, and more running around that she has to tend to. So, it couldn't do it without her. My kids now, my daughter's 15 and my son's 14, and then I got a 11-year-old daughter, and it's kind of neat now to see them, getting older and being involved. My son, he helps us during the summer, when he's out of school, and helps harvest, and including my daughter some. My older daughter, she helps, help move equipment and stuff, and it's kind of neat seeing them, more in a work environment, kind of that work environment, which is kind of different than the hustle and bustle and the home side and running back and forth to school. You kind of see a different, personality of them, and thinking maybe they're getting shaped and molded in the right direction that you're trying to. So,
one of our challenges is the fact that Dee's been working here a long time, been working in his role with some of our other board members, but having young producers, men, women, spouses, together that are doing. It's good to hear these stories where you've got your kids involved, and the fact that that's what part of farming is. It's about the family and how you can raise them. And I'm going to ask Dee. He's got an interesting story with his family and his 3 daughters, which I've known a good while, and where they're at and how that's playing into how you're looking down the road for your farm. So it's kind of the full picture from kids up to where you're at now.
Yeah, my kids, I have 3 daughters, and they're all grown now and have families and have careers of their own. So they're not interested in coming back to the farm, but they were a big help when they were growing up. They helped move equipment like Aaron was talking about, and they re-nozzled sprinklers and did a lot of stuff like that. Just were a good help on the farm, and they enjoy it, and they still love coming back to the farm to visit. They love to come in the summertime and spend a few days and bring their kids and my grandkids. And of course, we love to have them all up, and we barbecue and eat out in the backyard and enjoy the drive around the farms and stuff, and just have a really interesting time. But at the same time, they don't have an interest in coming back to the farm and farming. And so actually, I have 4 employees, 4 men that work for me. And I'm very fortunate to have really good quality people working for me, and look forward to a couple of them I'm going to help them get started. And at some point in time, they'll take over the operation is my plan.
So was that a hard decision to make, that it wasn't your daughters and son-in-laws? Or?
Well, I guess you always, hope that your kids will do what, I don't know how many generations back the Vaughans go back that were farmers, but it's a bunch. And so, I know my dad was very pleased that my brother and I both decided to farm. And, I guess you like to see your kids do, but, I'm very pleased with what they're doing. Like I say, they have great careers, and I certainly don't begrudge them a bit for what they're able to do.
I have an interesting story with these kids. One of them was, well, Jana was kind of already out of school, probably, or more farther along, but got to know Keisha while she was in D.C. and getting her degrees. And then, of course, your youngest one, Lindy, I'll never forget being in Austin with you getting ready to go to the Capitol. And Dee says, is it all right if we eat dinner together and all that? So here comes Lindy. Right in the middle of the conversation, I find out about a boy, or her dad finds out about a boyfriend that's become a son-in-law.
Yeah.
So I always felt like, well, I was a part of that when it started.
Yeah, she told us about him over dinner, and then, of course, and as it turned out, he became my future son-in-law.
Yeah, I've always thought about that. I thought, I think I was out of place that day. And then I thought, no, I was the buffer.
I would just treat you just like your family.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's an interesting story. I hadn't been there with y'all yet, and probably won't be, but that's kind of like working within this group. You just kind of become a family.
Yeah,
I feel
absolutely.
like we have family. Some of our farmers, it's former board members, and just some of the guys we worked with. They're just like all of our families, but I'll never forget that experience. I mean, never.
Yeah, I still remember that too. We were sitting out on that patio
Exactly.
in downtown Austin.
It was quite a story, and it was all true. So
Yeah.
Anyway, so Aaron, you as chairman, you've been in this role about 2 years now.
Yeah.
And, what's some of the big challenges or things you've really picked up on while being a board member? But how is it different being chairman?
Well, some of the challenges. Just, as chairman, I always just think as being a chairman is making sure everybody in the room is heard. With corn producing in the state of Texas is so diverse with, our different regions and our, the challenges within those regions, and just making sure everybody's, needs and wants are, brought to the table and heard, and making sure that, if something needs to be acted on, that the ball gets moving. Because a lot of times, issue can be brought up, but then it just doesn't go anywhere. I think in the last few years, well, ever since I've been on the board, that's one thing I feel like is this board is, if something needs to be done, it's done. Talk is cheap, but it's one thing to move forward and put plans in actions and put pressure on people and where it needs to be. It's always, and the target's always moving. And sometimes you think, the issue that's current, and you start to work on it. It may be months or a year or two before it kind of gets resolved, and you almost forget about it. So a lot of times when people ask me, well, what do y'all do? Or, what's some of the good things y'all have done? And I got to kind of scratch my head because it's usually items that we've worked on for a year or two, or maybe 5 years. You kind of forget about it, or it's just so ingrained that you don't think about it anymore. Yeah.
Yeah. And I can think when you came on, you'd gone through one of our leadership programs and done some things, but a lot of your area had aflatoxin issues, and about the time you came, we started getting the first labeling of some of the biocontrols, and I hear so many farmers talking about how big of a factor that was for them, and is that one of the things on your farm also?
Oh yeah, when I started farming, or even when I was a kid farming, when our family was farming, there in the late 90s, early 2000s, aflatoxin was just a huge problem. And it was a problem that was getting bigger and, it's getting worse and worse. And, then at that time, I remember when the, first product, AlphaGuard came out, and then there was some talk about this AF36 product, and it was a product out of Arizona, and just knew very vague information about it. And I don't know, I guess that would probably have been in about 2012, 11, 12, 13 time frame. Then I started getting involved with the board on 16, I think, 2016. And well, then all the dots kind of lined up. Oh, okay, I know how all this learned through the years of, all the work y'all done, prior to my existence being on the board, all the work that y'all have done to research and get those products moving.
Well, and that's one thing I like most about Texas corn producers is that it's so diverse across the whole state. Like, we collectively as a board will go all in to whatever issue we're having, where that doesn't affect us in our growing area at all. But we're all in it because it affects, Central Texas, down South Texas. So collectively as a board, whatever the issue is, everybody's on board to find a solution and go, whether it directly impacts you or not. I mean, that's one of the things I'm kind of most proud of our work, is that it's not selective. It's not like we're focused on some isolated issue that affects my farm or Dee's farm. It's state producers as a whole across the entire state, what's affecting them. And collectively, we all kind of pull together and say, here's what we're going to do about it. But then to have growers from that area that can give the real life, here's how it's actually affecting us, not just what the research says. And so it makes you proud to know that you're actually working on things that are impacting people outside of you or your farm or your area.
That's always been something that has been unique. Our state is so diverse.
Yes.
We refer to it as sometimes we got 4 or 5 growing regions within the state that really kind of like we have that many states to work for what some of the areas up north are. They're smaller states, and how collectively the board has always worked and expended money on projects that went to all parts of the state.
Yes.
Dee, you've been around a long time. I'm sure you remember some of the Section 18s and things y'all did years ago for some spider mites and stuff.
Yeah, we worked on issues that were, relative to a specific area, but maybe not to the whole state. And we were always, as Kyla said, we were all in on it. And that's something that, working with the northern states as through NCGA, you talk to folks in Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Minnesota, those states are pretty homogenous. The whole state's basically the same climatic zone, the same, they plant all at the same time, they harvest at the same time, very homogenous in the way they farm. And so they have a real difficulty. You talk to them about Texas and Texas corn production, and they really have a heart struggle to get their arms around it. That we have somebody planting or harvesting basically year round, one or the other. We had the Valley planting in February, and then Central Texas in March, and the Panhandle in April and May, and then by the time we're finished planting, well, they're harvesting in the Valley already, and then it just moves up north again. And they don't understand that in the Midwest. They have a hard time understanding that. We have corn in February that's coming up, and in the Panhandle, we're still covered with snow.
Yeah. I remember when I first started, that was one of the real interesting things to learn more about Rio Grande Valley and their planting season and Coastal Bend moving into Central Texas and how all of that was. And then you say, we're going to have a board meeting. Well, we got to have a quorum to make it work. And all of a sudden, it's hard to get a quorum sometimes because of, you're not going to be a corn farmer if you're not there when it's time to plant and when it's time to harvest. And sometimes Mother Nature moves those around. So it makes our planting hard sometimes.
Yeah. Makes it difficult to have meetings.
Yeah. One of our things we do to our association is a lot of policy work, and that's been really, it's kind of grown over the years and what we've done and the influences we've worked on. But How many farm bills have you worked on as a member of the Corn Association?
The first farm bill I worked on was the 96 farm bill, which was called Freedom to Farm. That was when they totally decoupled the farm programs from the old allotment basis type where you planted your base and you had to lay so many acres out every year. In 96, they totally wiped it all out and said, plant whatever you want, as many acres as you want. You just have freedom to farm. And of course, it didn't work exactly the way Chairman Roberts wanted it to work. He was chairman of the House Ag Committee and wrote that bill. But it didn't exactly work out. It left agriculture holding the bag financially. We did not provide enough support to U.S. The safety net was not adequate. And so Larry Combest came back in the 2002 Farm Bill and reinstated a lot of the counter-cyclical programs and stuff. But one thing they left intact was the fact that you could still plant whatever you wanted. You weren't locked into, well, you've got corn base, so you got to plant corn. You've got cotton base, you got to plant cotton on that. You could just plant whatever. And
So-
that part of it's been good.
So prior to that, if you had a farm, you had some corn and some cotton and maybe grain sorghum base, you had to plant those crops on that farm.
You had to plant what your base was. And of course, there were set-aside programs. Usually in those days, it was anywhere from 10 to 35% was set aside. So you always had fallow ground that you weren't even farming.
I remember that as a kid, always plowing and plowing and plowing those set-aside acres.
And of course, that's one reason why the Midwest didn't participate in farm programs very much, is because they had that great rainfall, great soil, very temperate climate to grow corn, and they wanted to plant every acre every year, so they just didn't participate in the farm program until the 96 Farm Bill opened it up where they could do what they wanted.
So it's quite a history that you've been through.
Yeah.
I think about Aaron and Kyla. Y'all have both been with us in D.C. talking about different things from what some of the things policy-wise we worked on that y'all can think of that's kind of been important to you.
What comes to my head first, like I felt fully invested and I was making change to do at the USMCA. And you go and then it comes and then it, we've seen how that has kind of not worked out the way it was intended to work out when you're initially advocating for this push. And that example alone in part of this is you push and you do and you put all your efforts into this. But it's ever changing. Kind of like Aaron said, the target is always moving. And so by the time you work on that issue and you get it come, here's 5 more that kind of almost even take precedence sometimes. And so you're always on to the next, I don't want to say problem, but the next issue, right? So you focus and you put all your efforts here, but then it's just resiliency. You're moving and it's constant to keep on top of what issues are arising and then try and fight the good fight and move along knowing you're never done. Your advocacy is never complete or accomplished or like, oh, okay, we're good. We can relax now. Like, no, there's something or many somethings coming too.
Aaron, do you have something you think about?
Oh, I don't know. Talking about going to D.C. and bringing your issues there. I guess I've been going to D.C. maybe about once a year. I can't think of anything in specific, but there again, it kind of all starting to run together. I mean, always going in there, talk about ARC and PLC or some crop insurance issue that's going on at the time. And then also it's not so much what issues you bring to the table. It's also just walking through the door and making sure they know who you are and you know who they are and thank them for what they've been doing. And that way, when there is a true issue that you have, they recognize you. I think that's probably the most important thing is going to DC in the offices and building those relationships. I mean, I've had some of the ag legislative assistants that's worked for Congressman to my farm, on a tractor or on a cotton picker, and you know, that's real memorable for them, you know, and that's what I always think is just building those relationships, and you know, that way they're there when you need them, and we've definitely needed them.
I know I can remember one of the legislative aides here out of Central Texas that came to your farm and told me over and over about, I think y'all were harvesting wheat or corn, something at one of those times, and being on the combine and doing that. And I can remember a few years ago, Senator Cruz was doing a tour through the state, and him and his chief of staff, well, Senator Cruz rode with Robert Gordon's son in the combine, and the chief of staff was with Patty in the tractor. And when he got out, the chief of staff said, "I know about farming now because she informed me." So getting those folks out and having y'all take your time to show them around and meeting them is very important, because, you know, when you can put a face and a name on an issue, it becomes a bigger, higher importance. So,
The two things working in public policy will teach you is perseverance and patience first, because it takes years to get policy developed and passed into legislation. We finish one farm bill and we immediately basically start on another one. Same way with an energy bill or anything else. Congress works slowly, and it's to a certain extent it's by design to work slowly. That way we don't get as many bad laws, hopefully anyway. But at the same time, it's very frustrating at times, because we like to get it done quick, get it done, get it over with. But it doesn't work that way. And the other thing, it will just teach you to you got to stay involved and build relationships. It's all relationship based. If you don't build the relationships with your congressman, with your senator, with their staff, with your delegation from your state, it's hard to have influence. And so the things you learn about are the requirement to have patience and just stay with it until the job is accomplished. And then the other thing is you got to build those relationships so you can get it done.
all right. Yeah. So it takes time.
It takes time.
You know, one of the things that I think that we're all proud of, and y'all have very much worked in it, is sponsoring or some of the intern programs from the universities, from letting us have interns in the office, and raising up some of those folks that now we have great relationships from all of that. And so that to me has been one big shining star that I feel like y'all as board members have encouraged and pushed in doing that. I'm going to change the subject a minute on you. Aaron, if this puts you in a bad spot, we won't do it. But we've recently had some issues in the state. The most recent issue I'd mention is some grain trucks going around loading corn under false pretense, and some of that's been in Aaron's area. You might kind of mention some things that happened and how farmers need to be on the lookout.
Yeah, just when you think corn's too cheap, people still want to steal it. It's still valuable enough to steal. But yeah, there was kind of, through a large part of the state, and some of it, in my backyard. Some guys, trucks pulling up on the scale, say, well, I'm here to pick up from XYZ, firm, and here's your contract number. And I mean, it all matches, and, they get loaded up. I mean, it's the same kind of process that's been done thousands of times, a year. And they put on the ticket where they're going, and the grain never went to the destination. And they were never, the trucker was never sent by the broker. So there's obviously some inside information shared around, what elevator to go to, who to say you're picking it up for, what the contract number was. So It was,
It just kind of comes down to you got to do more than just. You're gonna have to do more verification
Yeah.
of some kind to be sure.
yeah, I
you're
mean,
gonna get what you're getting.
talking to my neighbors, and I mean, the whole process is what's been done. It's commonplace. You just, they pull up and say who they're picking up for, but definitely going to have to do more due diligence of making sure when they're supposed to come and who's supposed to come. Because no telling where that corn went. I mean, hope
I
the
know.
bad actors get found.
And we get a call in the office, or you get called as directors, and all of a sudden there's not much we can do about that. I mean, other than get the Department of Agriculture involved and hopefully some law enforcement and track it. But another issue, and we've had varying levels of things with this, are some of our buyers that have had financial trouble and haven't been able to pay. You've worked tirelessly back a few years ago on looking at about a grain indemnity fund to protect growers that didn't get paid. And Aaron's just recently had an issue with that, and I feel like our board is, y'all tell me, but I feel like we've done a lot of efforts trying to help with those problems, and how it's personally devastating to me whenever I had a young farmer in South Texas call me and said, I had 80% of my grain I sold to this buyer, and then I get a bankruptcy statement. And I think he's in his second year of farming. My heart went out to him. That'd be a terrible time to lose your income. But do you have any comments about some of that and how we look at working it?
Yeah, other states have an indemnity fund, which is basically an insurance program that provides when a grain buyer goes bankrupt, provides some financial assistance back to cover part of the losses. And we tried to get one started here in Texas. Daniel Berglund of our board and myself, we were on the original board of the Grain Indemnity Fund. We got the legislation passed by the legislature. Forget what year that was, but it's been several years back. And then we had it didn't work exactly the way we wanted it to. There were some amendments at the last minute, changed it. So we had to go back to the legislature, get some stuff fixed, and then we were ready to get going. And unfortunately, it did the referendum to authorize it. It required a referendum of all the growers in Texas to vote for it, or a majority to vote for it. And it failed not once, but twice. And so we were never able to get it across the finish line and implemented. But if that was in place for Texas, like it is in other states like Iowa and Illinois and Missouri, when one of these grain buyers goes bankrupt, the farmer would have some protection.
Well, Aaron, do you mind making a comment about maybe what the Corn Board's done to help through your most recent experience, you and others?
Yeah, so talking about grain indemnity fund, I guess that was, when did that, was that in 2016, 17, 18-ish time frame, somewhere in there? Yeah, that's kind of when I just got on the board. And, I remember the discussions in the room about the board. You and Daniel were obviously heavily involved. And, I was just trying to figure everything out at that point in time. But I remember, thinking, well, it'd probably be a good thing. And I remember, going to a few meetings back home and making people aware of the referendum that was going on. And, I wasn't against it. I can't say I was overly for it. I was just putting information that, hey, this referendum's going on, and, you need to vote, however that may be. And, I remember, encountering more people that were against it at the time than probably for it. They had their reasons. But now I wonder how much that sentiment has changed in the area.
Yeah. Fast forward to this year.
Yeah. I really wonder how much has changed now. I know my perspective's changed, or I was for it at the time, but now I'd probably, be more of an advocate for it. I mean, through the most recent bankruptcy case, the Hanson Mueller deal, I mean, I did get hung by some of that. And I remember thinking back at the time, well, you need to know who you're doing business for and have that relationship. But, all is fine and dandy until it ain't. I mean, I was doing business with them and all was fine. Just, it was all normal until the checks didn't arrive, So, I mean, we insure our equipment, our operating liability. We insure our vehicles. We insure our crops through crop insurance. But when it gets to the elevator to the bin, as of now, there's nothing. We do everything to get it there, and then once it's there, we just hope they pay.
You're just at the mercy.
That's been throughout the years, those times, and we've had six big ones I can think of that were multi-million-dollar events. But in our state, they were important in an area where they happened. But when you were 100 miles, 200, 400 miles away, that'll never happen to me. But that's been real challenge. And, we've spent time, we're getting ready to put out a good publication about things to look for and some steps to take to help protect farmers. So,
Well, we talked earlier about just the broadness, the vastness of production in Texas, and everybody's always in a different stage, but your farm is very different from Dee's and his is very different from mine. But one thing I think we can all agree on is it's really, really tough to put in a crop, harvest a crop, and make a crop and be financially sound for the next year. Regardless, it's really tough. So moving things like that to add that, kind of like you said, like you insure every single part of it, and then just having those discussions on how can we, I don't know that anybody on our board was directly affected by this recent theft ring, but very easily could have been, right? So how do we move forward? Those are the conversations we have that I'm, again, most proud of, because again, it's really, really difficult to do what we do. So just planning ahead and how can we make it better for the next year or the next person or the next generation even?
You always learn the most whenever you got to go through, an ordeal or situation.
Yeah.
Yourself. And through this latest bankruptcy, through the Hanson Mueller, whenever the bankruptcy filings came out, we, the board looked at, they had a listing of all the Texas producers. And I think, amongst staff and board members, we've contacted most of them and kind of got everybody together. And I guess it was on a Zoom and kind of just got everybody talking to each other. Got some guidance through some attorney and kind of got us all on the same page and moving in the same direction. And we'll see if it comes out. But I feel like I'm in a much better shape with my fellow Texas producers rather than just hoping I get paid.
Sitting at home and holding no paper by yourself.
Yeah.
Kyla, you've been real involved over time with a lot of our advocacy, Common Ground, some of those programs.
Mm-hmm.
You have some thoughts you might share about that and why they're important?
Oh my goodness, why are they important? It bridges the gap between what we do and where it ends up. Is kind of the most simple way we know what it's like to farm and to raise cattle and to do. But if you're just a mom in a grocery store, you probably don't know or even care to know sometimes what that's like. And even if you did have those questions, who would you ask? You don't know a farmer, right? It's not a very accessible person to have a conversation with. And then you throw all this misinformation and things out there. Would you even want to have the conversation if the opportunity arose? Enter Common Ground. Yes, you would. And we're right here and we're accessible and it's relatable because, yes, I'm a farmer. My family makes a living from farming and raising cattle, but I'm a mom first. And that just within itself is relatable. You can strike up a conversation and have a bit of camaraderie form out of the gate, but then that trust factor is there too. And it just bridges the gap so seamlessly, so flawlessly. And then it kind of spirals into other things, like not only the food production side of it, but the education side, all of the educational efforts that Texas Corn does. Like, hey, did you know that your kid's school could access this and bring it home and they could learn hands-on? And oh my goodness, I didn't know that. And so it's that bridge, but it's like a safe bridge, right? It's not one of the wobbly bridges where you're hesitant to walk across and you don't really trust it. Like it's organically happening in my life. Their questions are organically happening in their life. And so you just put the two things together and it kind of harmoniously creates this balance and this resource that's not only available, but trusted. Like you engage with these people and you feel that there's some weight behind it. You're not just, I don't know, like a spokesperson for a company. Like you're not selling them a product. I mean, you are, right? They're buying what you raise, but you're not selling anything. You're just talking about what you do and how it's done. And oftentimes they don't even agree with you, right? Like, I don't think you should be raising conventionally grown corn. Like, that's okay, because over here we have organic farmers that maybe suit you better. And it's not like this villainization happens. It's just raw conversations about what we do, how we do it, and how it comes about. And so it's so important because the disconnect is going to happen and the story's going to be told from someone. I would rather it be told from firsthand us as opposed to a media outlet or something that's like a third party disconnect.
I think one of the things I've seen is, or thought about watching all this is, you know, whether you're a farm mom or a city mom, what you feed your family has the same importance.
And even though I raise food for a living, I still have those same questions. I still read a label and think, what does that even mean? Or what is this? Or which one is actually better? Because that one sounds pretty And so even though you're in it, you still have all those same questions. Like, I don't want to feed my kids bad stuff either, And so you learn and you grow from it. But it helps just to have someone that you can rely on to answer the questions that everyone's going to have anyway.
I admire the work you've done. I've watched it.
Thank you.
The time that you gave. I know it's hard for it as a dad. It's hard for me to be away from my family, but I can't imagine what it would have been like as my wife being gone, because I wasn't a very good mom. Whenever I was home alone with my boys, we ate a lot of junk food. We went to town and got ice cream, and we had a good time, but probably I wasn't the best mom.
Well, I'll say, like Aaron said, like, it's only possible because of Cole, my husband, right? Like, without his support and his just diligence through it all. There was one time I went on a trip, and before I leave, I prep all the meals for the time I'm going to be gone. So whether it's 2 days or a week or whatever, there's for every day, right? And so I got home and they were all still in the fridge. So I'm like, what did y'all eat? Like, what happened? You didn't have any fruit or anything. And he looked just so serious. He said, we have Fruit Loops. I'm like, okay, I guess that counts. Like Fruit Loops, whatever. Like, end of the day, dads do it different, but they were all alive and fed, and it works out. So standards have shifted. I won't say lowered. Standards have shifted since I've been doing this. Like, he does it his way, and the kids probably enjoy it much more, honestly, than when I'm home.
Well, that's a good story. Anyway, well, Dee, I'm going to ask you a question, and the other two think about this. When you have your downtime at night, you can't sleep. What's keeping you awake? And I know you send emails at 3 o'clock and 1 o'clock in the morning, so I know you.
Yeah, I've always been a night owl. Anyway, I get in my office and it's quiet, and if I'm going to run the combine, that's when I like to run it. I take the evening shift. I come in at 6 o'clock and I run till 11 or 12 midnight, whatever in the morning. And I just like the nighttime. That's my thing. What keeps me up? Oh shoot, water situation in the Panhandle with the Ogallala and the Dockham aquifers. I worry about, like I told you earlier, I've got 2 men that are been with me and they're good people and they want to start farming, and I'm like, am I doing them a favor or am I hurting them? Should I tell them to go find another career, or should I embrace it and help them get started? Which is what we're doing. We are embracing it. We are helping them get started and helping them to take over the operation at one point in time. But at the same time, I kind of worry about, well, am I doing them a favor? Is with the water situation the way, in the future, with farming, input cost, all the other issues that we face, tough times from cyclical commodity prices, all those issues, am I doing them a favor or am I hurting them? So I worry about that kind of stuff. And, like I say, my kids are all grown and they all have careers. So I'm not, they're fine. But I worry about, these 2 guys I'm trying to help get started. I want them to be successful.
Okay. Aaron, what about you?
Yeah, thinking about, in our area, it's just blowing up with the concrete or, solar or data centers or you name it, anything but agriculture. We're kind of like in the way. And it's like, well, it's going to be there long enough for me to just keep going and coast out my career. Or then I think about, well, if any of my kids are interested, maybe my son says he is, which he's, he's still kind of young. So I'm like, well, he'll got some time to figure it out, but he's 14 now. So, that 3, 4, 5 years are going to move by quick, It's like, well, kind of like what you talked about, Dee. Well, should I encourage it or discourage it? What doing is that going to be a favor or not? So that's the things that get me thinking. But if I sometimes think if you don't have a succession kind of like, in mind, like, my son or something coming in, your perspective changes a lot. I think, like, do you just do what gets by, or do you keep building and advancing and growing?
Okay. Kyla, do you ever wake up at night and wonder about something?
The saying of the hardest part about chasing your dreams is whether the difficulties are pointing you towards stopping or building resilience, right? And so deciphering, like, are all of these things, like all of the droughts and all of the regulations and the input costs and all the things that we take on, like, are those signs that maybe this isn't your path and I'm just that dense, like, no, this is just part of it? Or are they just building resiliency so you can keep going and you can overcome, and maybe your farmhand or your kid or whoever takes it on and you've kind of worked out some of the kinks along the way? That's my biggest struggle, is like, is all of this that we're doing really actually for the betterment of the long term? Or are we just really taking the hard road unnecessarily for, whatever reason? So that, and then you couple in, I worry about the things that you really just can't control, like the drought, right? Like, what are we going to do? Where we are, it doesn't rain much or it rains too much, and there's no consistency to it. And how do you take a crop and you just pray, is my point. Like, you can stay up all night long worrying about it and thinking about it, but ultimately you just pray. And so far we have a 100% success rate of surviving the bad times. So you just keep on going on.
That's great. So as we look at agriculture, I'm not going to call Dee old, but the average age of the farmers, or in general, keep climbing. What's the best thing you could tell a young person about getting involved in agriculture? Make them want to do it. What would you say? What's been the best part of it for you? Sorry, I'm making y'all think so hard.
Just the word that's coming to me is the pace. The pace, the lifestyle that farming offers you is kind of like you mentioned, the hustle and bustle of like the town side of our lives, like the constant going and the pickups and drop. Like it's just, I'm not going to say it's easier. It's definitely not easier, but just the pace, the slow, like you talk to your girls coming back and just driving around and being in kind of the beauty of what the farm itself is. Like that to me is worth it, is worth all of the other things that come with it. So just like with everything, there's highs and there's lows and there's good and there's bad, but the good is really good.
I think you have to have a personality type that you like to be challenged, because it definitely, as Kyla's pointed out, there are definite challenges, droughts, there's floods, there's, good years, bad years. You just have to have, the willingness to handle those challenges as they arise. But you got to also, take a lot of pride in what you do. Well, we provide food, fiber, and fuel for the world, for the United States and much of the world. And it's like, there's people out there walking up and down the street out there, and every one of them have something in common. They need us 3 times a day. And it's up to us. If somebody's not producing the food, then there's going to be a lot of hungry people out there.
It takes a lot of self-discipline. I mean, you're going to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning or sleep in till 9. It's your choice, but at the end of the day, you got to get your work done. So it takes somebody with some self-discipline to, do what needs to be done, even though it may not be the easiest thing. It won't be the easiest thing. And, seeing the fruits of your labor and seeing what those results will be. And anyway, seeing the fruits of your labor, I mean, whether, what's the right time to put out fertilizer or to plant or to spray or to harvest. And, you won't ultimately know the answers to those questions until, months or something later, and you just got to learn to make decisions and live with them. And if you made the wrong one, learn from them so that you can, add to your database for later. Because it won't be the same decision to be made later. It'll just be the circumstances around that decision you made that you need to learn from.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right there, Aaron, about discipline. I started farming in '78, and of course we went through the farm crisis of the mid '80s, and it was rough. Corn was $1.65 in 1985, and it was a tough time. A lot of farmers went broke. There was a lot of young farmers in my neighborhood at that time, and most of them didn't make it. And a lot of it's beyond their control. You can't control the markets, you can't control the weather, and that takes a lot of people out. But there's also a lot of people that try to farm and they don't make it. And a lot of times it's because they don't have the discipline to get out there and get the job done on a daily basis.
Well, and to know too, like the work never ends. You just finish that task and then you're on to something else. So it's not like, like a office job or something. Like I had a project and I completed it and now that's over. Like, oh, no. Like it never ends, ever ends. So the discipline comes into factor there. Like it's just something else, right? Maybe you finish that task, but the work is ever plentiful.
Hearing y'all talk, but I think about this growing up on a farm. And the time as a kid, I can remember all the time I got to spend with my grandparents because they were on the farm, and with my dad and my uncle and my cousins. We all out there worked together. And I think about how much fun that was growing up. I thought then they were slave drivers, but I found out I really missed that. When I went to college, it's like, I'm not getting to do all these things I like doing. And that was one of the things. And then, like, for me now, we have an operation with my son, but I love it when my grandkids come and we get in a pickup and they'll drive through the cows and they want to run out there and catch that baby calf and pat on it and all of that. And I think, it makes me think the challenges are worth it. But I've worked a couple of other jobs. They had plenty of
Challenges
discipline
too.
and challenge. When I ran the grain elevator for a while, that was definitely a challenge, trying to keep the quality good and protecting our farmers.
Yeah.
So I hadn't editorialized on that, so I took my opportunity. But that's what I think about. There's no lifestyle like a farm lifestyle. All right, thank you all today for joining us.